Sup everyone, I'm Airier, and I'm not late to start the stream. I was just having a bad case of growing my own beans and make coffee, and in hindsight, it was a bad idea. But hey, you know what? You gotta follow through on what you do every now and again. More importantly, today we're looking at Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40K, episode 27, St. Lazarus. And why the hell am I capable of saying this when I'm live? But every time I record this and it's not live, I fuck up the word Warhammer. I know, this is usually what I cut out because why not? But we're doing it live, so this is a side effect of doing it live. Me rambling less somehow. I don't get it either. More importantly, we're just going to jump right in. I've been told spoilers, like literally the word spoilers for this episode when it comes to any title to use. So I do not know what we're doing in this video. If the thumbnail I made has anything to do with this, I am going to be surprised because I literally just picked random images out of a hat to see what fit and realized it's not going to, because if it does, that is absolutely insane. I should probably go buy a lottery ticket. So let's get started on whatever the hell is about to happen. More importantly, yes, my dirty secret. All the videos I'm going to record and still haven't gotten to. Yeah, ignore that, please. Starting up now. Also, yeah. Whoa, there's a lot of people. 53 people already? Holy crap. Damn. Hey, guys. Thanks for watching. Let's get started. You know, I actually had this jumped all the way ahead. Exactly to this moment. Oh, Humble Gaming YouTube channel. I think they've done a few more recordings for him as well. Also, I should probably mention there's going to be a lot of cuts in this video because I decided it was a good idea to pet kitties right before coming up. I decided to pet kitties before coming up and then rub my face. And then, in this exact order, remembered I'm allergic to said kitties. Yep, this is on me. What was that? Oh! Ben, you son of a bitch! I know that breathing effect. That is one of the most iconic sounds in pop culture for legitimately half a century. You know what? It's not actually half a century yet, but it's close enough that that's not an exaggeration of more than a decade, I think. Also, Kubik, I can't show you the cats because every time I let them in the office, they decide to eat wire, specifically the ones going to my PC that have more voltage than they can survive. I like my kittens alive. This room is not conducive to that state. It is a very big problem. I have no idea how to fix that. Other than getting covers that they've also decided they like to eat as well. Yeah. But apparently, we now have the Star Wars sound effect for freaking Vader! Oh, I just got it. Hey, Hobbit. Fucking A! Hobbit, holy shit, man. You gifted 20 memberships? God damn. Thank you, man. But also, I repeat my previous statement. God damn. Holy shit, man. I know that says St. Lazarus from up here, but I cannot read cursive to save my life. Like, legitimately, I cannot read that.
Sando felt his heart pounding painfully in his chest. He could not move. He could not think. The sheer terror of what he had nearly escaped chasing him like a phantom, unimpeded by the now sealed door. He barely had the time to draw in a couple more ragged breaths before he cried out in raw terror. The sudden scream torn out of him by the equally sudden appearance of the Imperial's blade. The glowing...
Yeah, I remember the Sando was going full-on Rambo, and it was actually really fascinating to watch. And then, unless I'm getting the character wrong, he got one up to show someone else's power, and then they cut the scene. So I'm actually a little... unless I'm completely wrong here, but goddamn.
Length of metal cut into and through the thick material of the door behind him, halting a foot from his face, the heat touching his skin even through his helmet.
Yep.
He rolled back and away as the sword began to slice upwards, beginning to carve a hole for its wielder. The clone hopped to his feet and scrambled down the corridor past the other clones who were setting up to defend the next choke point.
Oi, Sando! Where are you going?
I'm sorry. I just... I need to hear that again.
Up to defend the next choke point.
Oi, Sando! Where are you going?
Admittedly, I like the voice. It's fine. But going from Fan's voice, where he's very much in the moment and just giving a very forceful presentation, then we go, Oi, Sando! And I'm getting such Hobbit vibes for some reason. Probably because Sando sounds like a name of a Hobbit or a giant who should be in the WWE. It could go either way on this one. Oh.
One of the men called to his back, but he did not stop or slow, even as the sounds of other explosions, the heavy, pressurized punch of breaching charges, began to sound off behind him. The blasting started, followed by screaming, and Sando did not need to turn around or slow to know that more than one of the Imperial death machines had broken into their perimeter.
Sorry, I don't usually comment just on the image alone. I like to get to the story part, but I just realized what we're looking at. She's beating him with a book. You know, the light version of the Codex Imperialis. Admittedly, I realize the actual size of the Codex Imperialis is so ridiculously huge that it cannot actually be in physical format. So I'm certain they probably actually have it in physical format, and it takes multiple servitors to hold the spine together as the probably multiple story long book is unfolded over sheets probably larger than a person, because that's the kind of grim derpness actually is more accurate, that 40K really does emphasize. And frankly, I kind of love, because it's hilarious and dark and disturbing, but also kind of just silly and hilarious at the same time.
The loud, thundering thuds of their explosive weapons quaked the air around him, making it hard not to think about those terrible guns, and how helpless he would be if one sighted down his fleeing back and blew him apart. He was one bend away from his destination when a sealed hatch 12 paces in front of him blew open in a sudden spray of sage smoke and gunpowder. Sando sped up, charging with all his might, but could not pass before an owl-faced Imperial warrior loomed tall in the broken doorway. The wide lenses of her mechanized helmet burned.
Okay, yeah, we are talking sisters. I kind of figured as much from, you know, literally the Canoness in the previous image. But at the same time, I don't think I've ever heard anything in 40K described as owl-ish in any way, shape, or form. Which is weird, because that's such an iconic image for a face that has almost a mask-like quality, especially barn owls, that it's actually a little surprised. Hell, even beakies I've never heard of as owlish. Granted, they'd be more crows, but yeah, interesting. Sorry, I know I'm just geeking out on just a unique turn of phrase to describe something that is just, well, like I said, unique. It's neat, because most turns of phrase are kind of redundant because people hear one they like and then they use it, then other people use it, so you kind of hear over time similar phrases to describe similar things. And novelty is just really kind of fascinating.
Turned an intense green, and he could see clearly that she saw him and would reach for him. He leveled the Imperial death laser he still clutched in his arms and sprayed red lances of light into those green eyes.
He stole what is a really good gun for anyone in the Star Wars side, and a flashlight for anyone in the 40K side. You know, sister armor, I'm used to having it die pretty fast because I roll significant amounts of ones. But even against flashlights, they do pretty good.
Making the woman scream through the loud speakers in her armor and reel away, thrashing with the mace she held. Sando dared hope that this would be enough, only to be thrown halfway down the hall by the sudden strike of the armored Imperial's flailing power maul.
Oh, she got a lucky hit.
He groaned, stumbled up to his feet, and then fell again, dropping his gun.
On the other hand, he survived.
His left arm felt numbed by the grazing strike, and it was utterly unresponsive now. punishing his attempts to move with electrical jolts of pain. His whole left side felt thrashed, and his armor was cracked and shattered in several places, exposing the black bodysuit underneath.
Oh.
The clone gritted.
Okay, this is going to be a little embarrassing, but I didn't actually realize what the clones wore underneath the armor. This is stupid in hindsight, because of course they wear a bodysuit. They're not just going to put it directly on the skin. But I just never actually thought about it, so having Fan point that out is just one of those, oh, that makes sense. Followed by internally realizing the fact that it makes sense and I didn't think about it is kind of obvious in hindsight. So I'm both kicking myself and impressed that he would point out something that isn't exactly obvious on the face of it. Shouldn't be surprised, though, considering that's what Fan has been doing with the lore for both settings consistently for, like, what, 27 plus episodes now? I say plus because there's a ton of secondary episodes on the side and just all that. I was going to say jazz, but frankly, he might actually have a jazz number in here for all I know.
His teeth and staggered upright, drawing a blaster pistol he had salvaged during their setup and defense, and continued his egress.
Blaster pistol? Ooh.
Luckily, he found that the blow had tossed him down the way he had been planning to go and was soon at the room he sought.
Damn, this guy is massive luck.
He slid open the door, almost falling inside the large room where the explosives were being primed.
Oh. Ooh. So he wasn't trying to retreat. He was trying to go for the big boomstick. Yeah, I like this guy. I'm interesting, though, or not interesting. I'm interested in how this scene is progressing, because so far, every time this series starts, Fan usually defaults to an initial characterization scene to give us an idea of what's going to happen, and then move on to various other viewpoints within it to move around. Sando, I thought, was initially just a centerpiece to show us what trench warfare would look like with a guy who's immediately going to die. But he's not dead. Unless I'm completely mistaken on who this is. Entirely possible, because I do not memory the thing well. Actually, just checking out the chat. No, actually, no one's corrected me. Why am I feeling like I'm an idiot missing who Sando is? Yeah, either way, though, I'm very curious to see how this is going to go, because I'm not really sure what his point of the story is yet. On the other hand, it could also be experimental like Lazarus initially was himself, and he wasn't sure what Fan was going to do with him, but that made him a major part of it, if the title of this episode has anything to go by. Just trying to figure out what Fan is aiming for without knowing. Also, I don't think I remember to alert Fan I'm doing this, so, oops.
But when he looked up, he found the demo clones splayed out across the ground, their limbs and bodies shattered like broken toys.
That escalated.
And standing over the ruin of his men stood 5 towering women, all garbed in the same encompassing armor as the ones killing his men even now. They met his gaze and crouched milliseconds away from a forward lunge when Sando snapped out his blaster. He managed to fire just faster than they could leap.
Seriously?
His bolt sailing past them and into the demo charges which were heaped against the wall.
Rambo clone is right. Holy shit, man. You walk in, you see your dead comrades and the women in power armor with all the guns and probably melee weapons because it's sisters, standing there going like, well, you came to the wrong place. And you shoot the explosives you're in the room with because fuck this shit. Oh yeah, Rambo clone indeed.
The resulting explosion threw the clone back, tearing his gun out of his hands and ripping him away from the world of the waking for several moments.
If that is the worst thing to happen to him, people are saying he might be force positive or force sensitive. I'm thinking, oh no. The equivalent of Force Jesus, who I realize now, according to the Ahsoka timelines, is literally Anakin, is watching out for him. So, yeah. Dear God, man.
When he came to himself, he found that he could hear nothing and see little.
The fact that you can see little is more than I expect.
Dust fell all around him, and he found himself half buried in detritus.
if you have all
He
your limbs.
scrunched his sweat-laden face tightly as a terrible aching poured over him, molten and fresh. His entire body, particularly his left arm, was ringing like a painful dirge,
so the arm's
making his
gonna be-
attempts to rise blindingly agonizing. Not that there was much to see.
But if you
in
can
the
still
gray
feel pain,
mire
it's something
which
to feel it still.
surrounded him.
Sometimes.
He somehow found his feet, and not a moment too soon, as he saw but could not hear the shifting nearby piles of metal debris. Out from them
And they
rose the
survived too.
armored form of the Imperials, still alive in spite of everything, and the
You know, this really does hammer home. The explosives in the Star Wars side just don't hold up, considering a bunch of sisters in power armor got through, so okay, maybe power armor, but also the clone in regular clone armor got through. Granted, this is Sando. I'm assuming he's just got the luck stat that's been capped out at 10, but accidentally set to 100 at this point. And frankly, no, I was going to make a joke about that, but no, that seems perfectly accurate.
sight of them kicked Sando back into alertness. He struggled and stumbled as he made his way past their reorienting forms, limping out of the dust and grit which hung around him. There was a loud, horrible ringing in his ears, like a metallic ping,
Like you
which
just went through a
never
entire
ended
explosion?
or lost strength. Sando tried to ignore it as he made his way over the wreckage of the room, angling for where he knew the hole in the wall must be.
Oh my god, he's actually
But
blowing
the
through the wall.
ringing only grew louder and louder, developing into a
Ringing?
chaotic cacophony of familiar noises which his scattered thoughts simply could not place in the panic of the moment. However, one of the noises was growing louder and louder than the others. A high-pitched, continuous whistling which made Sando pause his escape attempt.
Whistling?
He knew that noise and collapsed down to his knees the moment he recognized it for what it was.
Oh, this is incoming fire, isn't it?
The whistling of falling mortar shells.
Didn't know they whistled.
The munitions impacted ahead of him in a volley of overlapping explosions. The shockwaves from it blowing away the thick dust and spraying the prone clone with wind and rain.
So he survives a power maul to the chest or face. He survives blowing himself up with a room of enemies. And I'm assuming he's going to survive being at the epicenter of a mortar barrage onto a location that is more or less assumed to be overrun by only enemies. You know, let's just be completely fair here. Saying he's force sensitive, like a lot of people in the chat right now are saying, is probably a disservice to Sando. Jedi have died to less than what Sando has just survived. This is... Yeah, I'm not even joking anymore. Saying that there's a force deity watching him is probably accurate. There's probably some good force positive entity, because those can probably exist in the Star Wars side, who's just going like, I like you. And that's literally all I'm going to rationalize here, because at this point, sure, why not? Positive force demon.
The battlefield was revealed to him, the lip of the breach which led outside only 2 feet from where he crouched. Before
This is
him
like
was
13
the cracked but
levels of plot
still
armor, but
intact
somehow in better
bunker
shape.
dome of the holdout they had been sent to clear. The prefabricated structure smoking and damaged from all the various weapons fire it had already absorbed. Yet, its sturdy construction remained in more or less one piece.
Oh, wow.
And the
Survived.
Imperials within continued to lay down heavy lines of
structure is
fire
thick.
from the slits and gun ports which, to Sando's relief, faced away from the building and down towards the avenue they overlooked. From down there and other structures across from them, the Vanguard forces were engaging the bunker and other Imperial forces which supported it. Casualties on both sides continued to mount without progress at what was fast becoming a bottleneck, one which the entire main column would soon be forced into. But thoughts of the main column and the plight of the other clones were lost on Sando, who cursed through bruised lips and began crawling forward.
If that's the worst of it, man.
He heard the crunching and stomping of the Imperials behind him. as they pulled themselves from the rubble and began to walk after him. His heart was beating in his throat.
Is he going slow enough that walking is appropriate, or are they injured enough that all they can do is walk? Very big difference here. On the other hand, it does sound like he is very much in the first camp where he's not able to move faster. So they're probably assuming they're just coming up to finish him off as a mercy kill. Or in Imperium terms, normal.
But a cold reality began to settle over him as he reached the back of the prefabricated bunker. He had nowhere to run and couldn't even if he did. Leaning against the cracked, smoking wall, he turned himself around just as the menacing shapes of the warrior women of the Imperium came into full focus past the blankets of rain, eyes glowing in the torrents of wind and water. One put aside her odd and overly powerful slug thrower, drawing a straight, massive combat knife to finish him off.
And they're falling into the obvious mistake of, you just double tap for a reason. Don't save ammo. If you see them, shoot them. I'm kind of surprised the 40K side is the one making that mistake. Just because, aren't they the ones who usually have to do that? On the other hand, 40K is over the top grim and just disturbing, so I'll do it myself with my hand is probably a thought process that is legitimately common. Also, I really love the art by this Kubik Kurak Tau guy. I'm sure I haven't seen it before. Joking aside, yeah, Kubik is just really damn good at this. And if he was in the chat, I would geek out right now. It's not like I just talked to him earlier when he was asking about seeing the kittens and I told him he couldn't, because that would be awkward. Mostly because I still want to get the kittens on screen, but I can't because for mentioned reasons of them eating power cords. Yeah. On the other hand, if I can convince my wife to bring them in, maybe at the end of the stream. Yeah, as long as there's a dedicated kitten wrangler, that might very well happen.
Sitting against the wall of their bunker, Sando understood the logic behind choosing a weapon which would not risk damaging their own structure further. But angled as he was,
their guns aren't that strong.
Else as well. Above the battle sister and the weapon she raised high to end his life. The blade shattered under the pressure of a sudden blue bolt of energy. The sisters present wheeled about, shielding their lenses from the sudden rain of blaster fire which began to fall onto them. The roof access teams had begun to rappel down, their descent led by the venerated commandos of Delta Squad.
Ooh.
There, Sando felt a burgeoning hope building inside of him as he watched two of the battle sisters fall onto the ground in writhing heaps and a third stagger.
What about the rest?
He had seen it all. The first sister to fall had taken 2 blaster shots into the face, one into each eye, courtesy of a red-painted commando wielding a sniper blaster.
Damn! So they're dropping from the roof with a sniper blaster, and at some, I'm assuming, close enough range for him to see both combatants at the same time, got double eye shots. That is actually kind of insane.
She now screamed through the speakers on her helmet,
and she
clawing
lived.
Like an animal at her eyes and helmet seals as she kicked and flailed. The second was also struggling on the ground as well, but not in pain, though her evident frustration was hardly the lesser of the two.
Oh?
It was with her and the third that Sando came to understand a weakness he had not known or seen before.
Oh?
Their joints. The creases in their armor where mobility was required were vulnerable to the heated plasma and charged ions of their blaster rifles.
Oh.
The second fallen sister and the third, which had been staggered, struggled against the weight of their own armor as they tried to
So it's not just that they can do damage to it, it's that the actual makeup of their charged ion, and that is a weird thing to say, weapons, turn off the powered supports for the power armor, meaning that they're actually better against better armored enemies on the 40K side. A Space Marine could probably power through and actually just lift his own armor, so it might slow them down a little, but they can actually still move in it. But a sister is still just a baseline human, just probably way better trained. And by probably, I mean for a fact, way better trained. but they're still just a human. So they need the power armor to accomplish that, and still, for some reason, they're only strength 3, even though they're strength 4 because of the power armor. Nice, but details aside, that is actually fascinating because if they can just break the joints, you don't need to worry about them nearly as much. If their arms are shot in such a way that they're locked straight down, they're much less threatening. It's kind of fascinating that a rapid-fire volley at them, especially or an aimed one at the joints, would be more incapacitating than actually killing them. And honestly, on the 40K side, that would be probably more terrifying because anything in 40K that takes you alive, no, there's no good option there. Death is usually safer. And the few times it's not, it's because it's usually a word bearer. And if you die, you just get their soul nommed on by default because that's apparently a thing they do just by being on a planet. Yeah, fucking word bearers.
React to the oncoming rush of clones. But their armors were not recovering quickly enough, and the hardened plates began to crack and warp under the persistent firepower of the many clone troopers.
Snipers are very good.
The two other women were quick to respond, screaming chants born on words of frenzy over their helmet speakers, laying into the exposed clones with their explosive firearms, aiming into the center of their mass to maximize how many would be struck by each lethal blast.
Smart.
He watched them sway and shift subtly, holding themselves in order to minimize the exposure of their black, vulnerable undersuits. Even so, though the clones were exposed and without cover, they were also arranged so that all of their considerable number could fire down into the Imperials as one, and the results took meager seconds to resolve. The Sisters of Battle fell as the clone commandos touched down, screaming for mercifully brief lengths of time as...
Okay, this is going to be an odd thing to point out. We know it's the Sisters of Battle, and that makes perfect sense to say the Sisters of Battle fell. But right now, Fan isn't writing from a perspective of someone in the 40K universe. He's writing from I can't speak today. The perspective of Sando. He knows that it's a bunch of women in power armor. And as far as I know, he's not in some of the more intelligence level briefings that would be aware of this because I don't even think there are intelligence level briefings that go into the specifics of internal unit makeups within the vast array of multiple forces conglomerated into this planet who were left behind. So it's just weird that he's talking about the Sister of Battle died or fell because since we're in his perspective, the narration is from his perspective, and his perspective wouldn't have that information. It's a nitpick. I'm completely aware of that. It's a stupid nitpick. And the only reason I'm pointing out is because mostly Fan doesn't make errors like this very often. There's been a handful here and there, and it's the kind of thing that if he ever put this into a physical novel, because for some reason copyright rules decide to stop existing, and he can actually publish this under his own licensing, which admittedly isn't impossible because things like this have existed. I'm looking at you, X-Men from Marvel and Star Trek, actual published original novel where they crossed over, and this is a legitimate book you can find and was okayed and put into stores. Marvel is Disney. Disney has the rights to that. They have the rights to Star Wars. It's halfway to being possible. And GW licensed the shit out of things. Who knows? Maybe this is the first time they would actually do that. I don't know. I really doubt it, but it wouldn't be the dumbest thing they do. I mean, they branch out, at least on GW side, into random mediums that are disconnected all the time. I'm looking at you, kids series. Because, admittedly, the only reason the kids series exists is because the parents who like 40K want their kids to get into the hobby, but also realize they don't want their kids to get into all of the hobby just yet when they're 5 years old. That way lies very awkward parent-teacher conferences.
They were, one and all, rapidly cooked to death inside their own suits.
Yeah.
Not one retreated. Not one even attempted to escape their fate.
Be surprised if they did.
And Sando saw it all.
And lived.
The leader of Delta Squad, a clone named Boss, came to Sando and hauled him up to his feet by his good arm. A clone in green paint named Fixer, quickly beginning to administer him Bacta via an advanced dispersal.
Wait, Real McCoy 1, thank you for the donation. 2, no, the Emperor or text-to-speech device lost points. Yeah, they did on that one. GW really effed up on that. On the other hand, if you really want to hear about GW suffering, look up what happened with their deal with Amazon. It's being publicly reported right now, and there's a lot of Schadenfreude involved. I'm not going to go into details just because it's way too big, but it basically comes down to, as I'll just briefly mention it, the current discussion is that the person signing for the 40K TV show with Amazon didn't read what they were given by Amazon. It was a over-the-top draft that any lawyer would veto, and the person at the GW, who is the higher up, and I don't know the name of, decided the appropriate response is just to sign it because, yeah, I got the Hollywood stuff going on. They signed a document saying that if they make the show through Amazon, they turn over the rights to 40K. Not the TV show, 40K. GW would be licensing Warhammer 40K from Amazon at that point. Yeah. I hope that's a stupid rumor, but I've heard multiple confirmations of it from multiple sources at this point. Yeah, that's fucking up at your job, all right. Also, hey, fans, sup, man? You woke up dying today, so you got better. I knew you were sick, man, but how is dying an improvement? Honestly, I'm almost half tempted to say, no, end the stream until you go back to bed, because, dear God, you alive is probably a good option here. Do we need to call a welfare check-in on, like, Fan to just make him, like, go to a hospital or something? God damn. Fan 1, thank you for coming. 2, please go to bed, because it sounds like you need it.
Unit. He took a deep breath and took off his helmet, smiling as the rain poured over him and washed his face
bastard.
Clean.
Wait. Was that the audio?
Smile dispersal unit. He took a deep breath and took off his helmet.
I'm sorry, the timing on that little vocal explosion. I'm not really sure of the term. Chanting? No. Well, there's chanting in the background, but there's like this one high note hit in a voice that just sounds refreshed right as you hear Fan talk about taking off the helmet. With how he arranges audio, that very much might be intentional, but I just love the fact that it comes in at that moment of relief for him. You just hear that high note. It's good sound design that just kind of fits well right now.
Helmet, smiling as the rain poured over him and washed his face clean. Even as this went on, a clone in yellow paint by the name of Scorch began to strap charges to the wall Sando had been leaning on, humming happily as he did.
Come on,
said Boss. Sando blinked, mind spinning, feeling both fast and slow. He did not respond, but stumbled after Boss as he was pulled away.
Hey, come on, snip out of a trooper.
The clone commando.
Okay. I can't tell if that's Brit or Aussie right now, but I absolutely love the voice given to the trooper just because it makes it funnier to me. I don't know why, but even though they don't all have Aussie accents in the show or the movies, I want to believe they do. It just makes it better. I don't know why. That's my headcanon. I'm sticking to it.
Said, hauling more urgently as he took Sando back into the building where most of the roof access teams were now taking shelter.
How many teams were there?
The clone who was pulling along didn't seem to understand. Sando was still just processing the fact that he was alive and standing,
for now,
still here, still part of the world around him. And the rush and then calm from that sudden Bacta infusion made everything feel surreal.
Yeah.
His heart
Adrenaline
felt
rush,
odd in his chest. His skin was both cold and warm in distressing alternation.
Massive
Boss,
adrenaline rush.
He's not taking the infusion well. He might be going into shock.
Infusion?
Said the green clone from somewhere.
Oh.
What?
Said the one called Boss, before he took either side of his own helmet and pulled it from his head. The seals hissing in protest as he did.
Hey, look at me. Here, look at me. Breathe, brother. Slowly. Breathe.
He said to Sando. They were behind something
like
now, the lip of a broken wall, rubble crunching beneath them as they and many other clones kneeled and hid from the blast they expected to come.
Blast?
Sando realized for the first time that he was hyperventilating and nodded numbly to Boss, trying to slow his breathing, recalling his training. 4 seconds, breathe. 4 seconds, hold. 4 seconds, release.
Oh! Wow. Sorry, I didn't. Fan just accurately described the process behind box breathing, which is an actual technique that is used to calm your heart rate. So, wow, just wasn't expecting that to be there. For anyone wondering, box breathing is where you do exactly what Fan just described. You take a breath, you hold it for 4 seconds, you let it out, you keep that breath out for 4 seconds, you breathe in for 4 seconds. It's the repetitive motion of just not going full breathe in, breathe out, but intentionally slowing it down that actually calms your heart rate by just that both thought process and physical reaction to a slowed intake of oxygen. It's letting your body adapt, but also giving you a mental calm on it. It's actually really effective, and I've used it to fight off a panic attack one time when I was really in over my head in a job interview. Yeah, that was a weird thing, but it actually worked. Also, I'm not sure why I was panicking, because I didn't need that job either, just wanted to do it. But more importantly, it does work, and fans describing basically the accurate way to look at it. Neat.
4 seconds. Hold. 4 seconds. Breathe.
What's your name?
Boss asked.
Sando.
Sando
Ooh,
told him
right
through trembling lips.
Good.
The tremble comes through.
Tell me, Sando, why they call you that?
Boss asked, helping center the clone.
I know this is the wrong time for it, but with a name like Sando, I just want him to say something about how he's grit, dirty, and gets everywhere and you can't get rid of him. Because it's the exact inversion of the stupid Star Wars Episode 2 meme. But also it kind of fits because he's gritting through this and you can't get rid of him because he doesn't die.
Sando could feel the feeling returning to his limbs, could feel the trembling he had not noticed receding. His mind began to work again, given something distinct to do, given questions he could answer.
Charges set and ready. Let me know when, boss.
Called the yellow-painted clone.
Blow him on a 3 count.
Boss yelled back. The yellow clone saluted and began to loudly and slowly count down as Sando began to answer.
It's from a saying we heard from Naboo.
The explosion detonated. A ball of fiery light ripping open the back of the Imperial hardpoint with a thundering roar. Its concussive force distorted the rain around it, and the sudden light illuminated even the deepest shadows. And it was in that sudden illumination that Sando saw the shape of his terror.
What?
He grabbed Boss's sidearm, and the clone commando, blaster in one hand, helmet in the other, was
If it's anything to go by that initial image, that means the Canoness is just entering the fray. Oh, dude.
able to stop him.
They have invul saves.
But Sando had not gone mad, and his purpose was revealed almost as quickly as the shots he snapped off. The clones spun to face him and the object of his aggression, raising rifles as the tall form of another Imperial stalked out into the open, now dark hallway.
Dude.
She was shrouded in incense smoke, which poured like fountain waters from two floating censer skulls which hung suspended above her shoulders.
And that does mean she's the old-style Canoness rather than the new plastic sculpt Canoness. I might prefer the new sculpt, but the old sculpt is completely and utterly metal, man. Okay, I meant that to mean metal as in, like, really hardcore and just super crazy. But then I realized that actually the models that did that were physically made of metal. So, double entendre. It's not as I intended.
The fearsome woman's armor was far more defined and ornate than that of the sisters the clones had already defeated, and was evidently far more powerful.
Yeah,
the
that's accurate.
eye lenses of her helmet were smoking from the shots that Sando had put into them, and yet her armored face remained totally unharmed.
Also, I just want to take a second to highlight that this work right here, Kubrick has done a lot of images, and usually he does very clean images that don't have a lot of atmospheric effects. So this is probably the most effect-heavy image he's ever done, and frankly, I think it's one of the absolute best character shots I've seen Kubrick use, so I'm actually legitimately impressed. Between just shading off the main character so that you then hype up the eye shadow, or I guess the eye highlighting, which again is a painting technique I cannot get done ever. I always go too far with it and it fucks up. But that looks great. The dark smoke aspect, so it just gives that hallway the empty feel. The fire rear lighting it so that their effect makes sense why they're so dark into the front. Everything about this looks really intense and I love it. It's just really well done.
She crushed rubble underfoot, grinding it to dust as she came closer. A halo of ominous light beginning to appear from over her ceramite shoulders. Sando could clearly see the emerald glow of many, many more.
Oh, so in the chat, Fan said, someone help distract me from being sick. Air questions, and I'll answer them if I can with no spoilers. All right, I have a question, Fan with too much time, if that is your real name. Also, if it is, wow, that your parents really were prophetic about that. Prophetic about that. How long before this also transfers back into the 40K universe? Either for an interlude or something else. Although that definitely would count as spoilers, but whatever. It's a question to distract you.
Eye lenses from many, many other sisters, following the wake of the first, shrouding the smoke-cloaked saint in an unholy green light.
Dude.
And with an ululating battle cry which trembled the steel around them, they poured out of the mouth of the hallway like flames from the jaws of a maddened dragon. And the clones began to burn.
You literally just cut it there. You bring up the Canoness walking out, glowing green and ominous, and then the lights of all of her other battle sisters appearing behind her. It's so intense, and you cut it there. Like, literally, is Sando literally the equivalent, and I'm just for the third time, literally, of the guy who you can give all the plot armor to because he's just going to get punched in the face by bigger and bigger problems? Because at this point, it does sound like that, and okay, it works out well, but goddamn. The Dark Lord? Which one? I mean, it could be Palpatine, but usually he's just Palpatine. It could be any Inquisitor because, I mean, that's accurate in general. Is it someone else? Is it Kaon?
The Senate had come to its decision mere minutes before the news of the Second Battle of Axum reached the Republic capital world. The mere shock of it threatened to toss the entire legislative body of the Republic back into session.
Really?
But this,
just one planet?
Palpatine could not allow. While his proxies and puppets stalled the reeling senators, he sent his orders to the Republic fleet through channels and sources he knew would be receptive to not only his own vast authority, but the message he bore with it.
What message?
Technically, he could no longer issue orders of such magnitude unilaterally, as he was no longer the, strictly speaking, supreme Chancellor of the Republic.
Because he's giving over power to Anakin to become the war leader, the war master, essentially. I know it's a different phrase. I'm not going to use it because we all know exactly what Fan intended. And if he's in the chat, if he can tell me I'm wrong, I'm definitely going to ignore it. I mean, I'll pretend I didn't. I mean, I completely agree with it. Anakin is definitely the war master. He fits it perfectly at this point.
Though he still held the title. Thanks to the workings of the Senate, Palpatine was now required to coordinate and agree with their newly designated Supreme Commander. A man who, at this very moment, was not even present on the world in question. And so he had sent them the only order he could issue that would be respected by most who saw it.
Fight, don't die.
Your Supreme Commander is fighting for his life on the planet of Axum. Go to him, recover him, and inform him of his new position before we are forced to choose his replacement.
Huh. Now, that's actually interesting that he would give this order. On the one hand, it makes sense because he's getting the forces to pile in on the planet where everything is happening. On the other hand, I'm kind of surprised Palpatine hasn't realized, oh shit, we're outgunned. Because it feels like he's piling in on where they have a way to win, but also throwing bad money after also bad money. Because, sure, the Jedi all dying is probably literal music to him. And I don't mean that as a joke. I mean, like, legitimately, if he has a recording of it, it would be the best thing he has on his playlist constantly over and over again. Like, he would create an iPod variant just to hear Jedi dying sounds. I'm not even sure that's a joke or not. But throwing all the resources that are willing to listen to him in a battle that very well might get them killed because of how everything else is going? Huh. Unless maybe, oh, the kittens are outside mewing. It'd be a real shame if my wife brought them in. Okay, she can't hear me. But it just, I don't know, it seems like maybe he's not aware of just how outgunned they are, considering that the forces they're just holding their own against and losing are the remains and not the actual force itself. I wonder if he's even aware. You know, if he's not, that makes a lot more sense in his decision-making process. Have to find out.
The old Sith had sent. As a result, the Republic fleet was assembling even as the first of the motions to reconvene were received. With that taking place, the Supreme Chancellor had reduced the effort and political capital required to dismiss those motions to a trivial sum. Yet, even so, he went even farther.
Oh?
He would not just deny these motions, but make a physical statement and rally his Republic with a proper showing of force.
Okay, fan, well done on that one. I just want to highlight the moment.
But make a physical statement and rally his Republic.
That right there. Just that little pause where he's like, his, and then he just says Republic. And Fan just drops his voice enough to make it sound almost like a slur, like he's just dragging it out of himself. I love that because you can tell exactly what he wanted to say. It's supposed to be his empire, but it's not there yet, so he has to just censor himself, even in his own mind, down to Republic. And Fan got that down there perfectly, and just that little change in the voice from his general flow of the dialogue to that extra little bit of, it's not quite there yet, but I don't like it. Well done.
With a proper showing of force. He stood before a thick set of transparent steel windows and watched as the sky above and around the rising deck of his vessel became crowded with the silver and gray wedges of his gathering armada. Like gripless blades, the titanic dagger-like ships rose in masses which cast deep, jagged shadows across the silver surface of Coruscant. The mass of their martial numbers, compounded by the titanic forms of Republic Station tugs, each tailed by the even larger, bristling masses of the Golan defense platforms they were pulling into orbit.
How big is that platform?
And around it all was the distant metallic haze of thousands upon thousands of fighters, bombers, boarding craft, crew carriers, and other, smaller support craft, moving between vessels and the surface of the planet like a frenzied cloud of countless irregular insects.
Whoa.
The Supreme Chancellor stood aboard the bridge of his newly designated flagship.
Okay, I'm just going to say it. I love spaceships, man. I'm just looking at this going, literally, my favorite parts about Star Wars were the space battles. It's why Empire was always my second favorite. Because Return of the Jedi had a giant fleet-based spaceship battle, and every second about that was just pure and undiluted sugar to me as a kid. Oh, so just seeing this image right now is just, I'm having a fan moment.
Formerly known as the Glory of Coruscant before its extensive refits. Sidious had seen fit to give the ship a new name once it had emerged from the rings of Kuat and became
What ship is
own.
this?
The Prosecutor sounded like a far more apt title by his own judgment, especially given his plans for the vessel. It was joined alongside her sister ships, the Call of Kuat and the Treasure of the Core. And the three massive vessels were further bolstered by the previously concealed strength of the Victory Fleet. Fully staffed and armed, loyal only to Sidious, and armed with the new, more warlike Victory-class Star Destroyers, the Victory Fleet...
And he's flat out calling them Star Destroyers, too. I don't know nearly enough about classes to realize if this would be early or not, but... Sorry. I know that in all practical senses, Star Destroyers are not that good. They had good designs and they had bad designs. But from a sheer fun design, Star Destroyers are freaking cool, man.
Impressive though it was, formed only the tip of the spear, with various elements of the recalled sector fleets composing the rest of the Republic's massed armada. With this force, he would go to Axum and finally begin making progress after the setbacks forced onto his plan by these cursed new outsiders.
Oh, okay, that is confirmation. He does not have any clue. He thinks he's going to Axum to make progress. Now, if he means he's going as in him himself, or he as in his forces without him, he thinks Axum's an inflection point. And it is for the Star Wars side, for the 40K side. Again, that's not their bulk of the main force. That is the defense forces. If Palpatine thinks this is going to be making a dent in his enemies, yeah, he's working on bad information. And that does clarify nobody knows, because if anyone would know, it would be Palpatine. Oh, what the hell happens when they finally get the reveal of, oh yeah, you were fighting the people we left behind to garrison it. That means there's going to be a fight out there somewhere that is going to be massive, and I am so looking forward to that. And probably also a one-sided slaughter.
And more than that, if his visions and premonitions proved true, then his departure would accomplish far more than what would be possible to perform at the location they would arrive at.
Departure would?
Just the thought of the possibilities brought a hideous grin to his face. "Supreme Chancellor," said the subtle voice of Sly Moore. Palpatine did not turn right away, languishing within the glory of his power, feeling each ship, each clone, each war machine, as meeker men might feel their own hands and feet. And this was nothing, only his nascent power. The Umbarn awaited her master's whim, and after a long enough time, he gave it.
The what? Oh, Umbarn. Okay, I thought he said unborn for a second. It was like, that would have been a lot weirder. So yeah. Huh. Sorry, I'm just thinking he's basking in the glow of his own power right now, and I am absolutely certain this fleet would lose because there's a lot less of them. He has 3 giant ships, and I'm just sitting over here going, like, we saw what happened before. You're not using tractor beams or a bunch of debris to crush things. Admittedly, there are actually ships in Star Wars that can do that and are featured as rather big opponents, but they're more like one-off things and generally not as good except for random times where they work. Like this. Oop. Excuse me, didn't mean to hit the mic. Oops.
"Proceed," he said without turning. "I have news for you, Supreme Chancellor.
Eh?
News that you intend to follow the fleet action to Axum has been leaked, as per your orders. The reactions are as expected, but the result will be determined, as you know, by the success of our actions on the field. And as you predicted, none of the Greater Senate have volunteered to do the same.
Yeah, and from where he's sitting, he probably still thinks he has all the cards, and it's just that his force at the time was reduced, and the Jedi just were incompetent. He's not looking at it as, oh no, they could actually crush what we have right now. It's why Sheena is looking at him like he's an idiot, probably, and realizing that he's got his heads wrapped up in... Oh god, he's drinking dark side copium. He's legitimately doing that right now. Oh god. Sorry, Palpatine is showing so much arrogance right now that I actually love it because he's going to get humbled so badly when they're probably going to be destroyed horribly. Just because I don't think it was going to work out that way, because we saw what a larger force could do, and maybe this is a larger force as well, but I don't think Fan inflated the numbers that much. He did try and level it up a bit because when you actually look at the Star Wars side, they were significantly smaller than what would actually make sense.
All are choosing to remain on Coruscant, she said.
Also, for anyone wondering in the chat chain, I don't think that's Sheena. They look completely differently. I was thinking Sheena, who's not in the scene, would think Palpatine is both an evil asshole, as previous things have shown, and also that he might also be insane. And, you know, you're probably right about that.
And Senator Amidala? He asked into his reflection. She has vanished. We currently do not know her whereabouts.
They don't know she's going.
His smile lengthened.
But he might.
Good. Is that all, Moore?
And he definitely knows where she's going. Yeah, so he's planning. Oh, that's why he's going to Axum. It's not actually about that. It's about wrangling Anakin. With his actually, no, they're married at this point. His wife there as well. But he's not expecting Kaon. You know, when the Chaos Space Marine actually has a chance to be the good guy in a situation. Fan, are you secretly Aaron Dembski-Bowden? I don't know.
No, there is one other thing. The tactician we were promised has arrived.
Tactician?
She said. And is the Prophet plan feasible? Asked the Supreme Chancellor. The pale Umbaran made a subtle gesture with her mostly concealed hand, activating projectors behind Sidious, which brought the plan before him to be inspected in clear, three-dimensional representation. The Dark Lord of the Galactic Republic slowly turned around, Sly Moore and most of the others on the bridge kneeling as he turned his regard, first to them and then to the plans. As his eyes scanned them, Sly began to speak from her kneeling position. According to the Kaminoans, the clone crews will be able to comply with these new, advanced maneuvers. They are eager to display the proficiency of their newest batches. Additionally, while they are somewhat uncertain...
This is something I'm not entirely certain on. At what point did clones stop being a thing in Star Wars between the Republic's end and the Empire beginning? Because I know there was probably some trade over. It wasn't just, okay, I won, now there's no more clones. Were they phased out? How did that go down? Because I don't know about the new batch. That is actually surprising to me. Mostly because, is this an extension beyond the normal timeline where clones would be created? Or is this something that did actually happen in canon and I just wasn't aware of it? I don't know which way it's going to go. I mean, I'm sure Fan will do fine with it either way, but I'm just very curious at this point.
About the performance of the new Victory class, they have guaranteed the technical capacity behind the Acclamators and Venators will be more than enough to meet the plan's demands. Palpatine felt his smile firming, cutting across his face. Good, good. I am pleased, most pleased, said the Sith Lord. His eyes gleamed on the darkened bridge, alight with the wraith-blue light of the projectors, and the deadly designs contained within. It was a beautiful plan, a scheme of simple, ruthless genius, and, just like the tactician who had brought it forth, it now belonged to him. It was time he properly revealed some aspect of his power to these arrogant outsiders, and teach them once more to fear the unknown.
I'm sorry. Everything about this right now is legitimately funny to me. Just Palpatine talking about, yes, the arrogant outsiders who should fear the unknown. I'm just sitting here going like, bitch, you are describing yourself. Granted, it's Palpatine. He is so arrogant. Even his own losses he considers part of his own plan. Whether they actually are or not doesn't matter at this point. Oh, and Fan got to my question. In canon, Palpatine did create vast reserves of secret ships and clones to crush the Separatists and the Jedi together. Oh. So this is probably from that initial one? And then he said in canon. Not what he's doing in this one, though. So he did their fan sneaky. Oh, Anakin and Kaon. Oh, dear God. This is going to go so badly. I love it. Literally, these two are just a dynamite stick waiting to go off.
We are nearly there. It will be around this corner and likely guarded.
The Marine...
Okay, as much as I like the really deep, resonant voice for Kaon, I know I mentioned it last time, and I'm going to mention it again. That sound just going all over the place in my headphones, that is actually hard to listen to. Because it's just like randomly pinging my attention in every which way. It works to make him sound really, really off-putting. But it also makes me kind of wish he wasn't speaking as much, even if he is a very fascinating character.
Marine whispered as they crept down the way. How heavily guarded do you expect it to be? Anakin asked back, stalking the large, armless man's shadow, saber drawn, but deactivated. The Marine grinned. It would not be enough. Not now.
This prison, as you call it, has only 8 cells and is largely a secret to the entire ship.
Only 8?
This hidden...
It's probably a chaos prison. Otherwise, there's really no other way that they would be dumb enough to use a number specifically for chaos. And the Radical Inquisitor doing this, definitely aware of that.
Facility and its adjoining structures are the personal pet project of an Inquisitor, a powerful lord of the Imperium by the name of Weiler.
Yep,
Due
it is
to the
Weiler's.
nature of his constraints and secrecy, the facility is necessarily small, and thus less secure than they like.
Kaon said as he crept low, coming to kneel beside the bend in the hallway. Anakin nodded, remembering the encounter that had led him down here in the first place. Coming down behind the renegade, the Jedi edged to his right until he could also peek around the corner. He spoke as he did. The imps did seem anxious about you when I first met them, and couldn't wait to execute you, in fact, Anakin said. The Marine almost chuckled at that, but suppressed his reaction. A moment later, Anakin was able to see why, as he caught sight of the defenses which barred their path. 2 massive steel doors at the end of a narrow corridor, which started wide after the bend and then became smaller and tighter the closer they came to the doors. The space on the sloping walls was not left vacant either, with several servitors built into them and the ceiling, each one grotesquely fused with a large weapon emplacement, their dead, bloodshot eyes scanning for targets. They were arrayed to have clear firing lines past each other, a task made infinitely easier by the narrowing of the walls they were built into. Lastly, 2 masked women, not unlike the ones who had escorted him down here, stood sentinel before the doors, each one hefting a shield in one hand and sparking power maul in the other.
Is it going to... Are we talking a Sister of Battle, or are we talking a Sister of Silence? There's a very big difference there, and it's a power maul. I don't know if the sisters have that, which is weird considering they're kind of limited now that I think about it, at least on the table.
I can hear 7 servitor turrets built into the walls.
Kaon said. Close. 9, actually, with some really, really big guns. Anakin corrected.
9. It would be 9. Okay, Skywalker. Do the turret.
It would be 9? I don't know nearly enough about Chaos to realize which number that's for. I know 8 is corn, and frankly, I kind of ignored the rest because I never cared. I don't play Chaos. I don't get into much of their lore. I don't really find them interesting. That's just me.
Let's look integrated, linked in with each other.
The Marine asked. Anakin squinted down the hallway at them, trying to make sense of their grim
it's the Arbites? Ah, okay.
I'm not sure. How would I tell? Anakin asked him.
Look at the way they are scanning and moving. They should be able to coordinate their overwatch targeting around each other without a cease in movement. It's, how would I explain it? It's in the barrels of the guns. They won't ever endanger each other with crossfire.
Anakin focused his eyes on those details, watching the black-armored droid men jutting from the stone walls, each mounted like a grisly display left out by some horror-vid hive of monsters.
Yeah, that is legitimately the best way to describe anything to do with 40K construction. It's a horror-vid hive. Hell, they even call most of their big cities hives. So, yeah, no, this makes perfect sense. Unironically, the best description ever.
His revulsion, he did manage to notice what Kaon was speaking about, soon noting the unceasing pattern he had described and how it never endangered the other turrets. Yeah, I see it now. Yes, they appear to be integrated. I guess that means we won't be able to fool them into cross-firing on each other. Anakin said at length, Kaon responding with a soft, mirthless huff.
True. Integration in that way is normally a good thing.
But...
especially within the shroud of their anti-psyker morass.
But they don't have the anti-psyker field anymore because they just killed them all. Oh. How much effect does he have on a linked system through here? Wait, no, this is the guy who fought Magnus and won. He could probably do it.
Our minds would be unable to touch their primitive, unprotected demi-thoughts. But that shroud is not so thick as it was.
Kaon elucidated. Do you think you could lift it? Now that I've reversed the polarity on those rods, you should be able to... Anakin
rods,
started.
Plural. I can, but it's a strange power that I'm using now.
What?
These amplifiers will work for us, but I'm uncertain for how long.
Kaon admitted. Are you afraid they will switch back? Anakin asked.
I mean, he's afraid they might blow up.
To smother the dismay in his voice. Changing each of the rods into an amplifier had left him feeling completely drained.
But
and
he
was
did
less
it.
than certain he could even attempt that kind of thing twice.
Wait, how many did he switch over? Because they're saying plural, and I know he did a few, but at the same time, it almost sounds like between now and the last time we saw them, he switched over all of the rods in total. I don't know. It's probably, but no, he's mentioning twice, so he probably just did an initial batch and nothing else. And the rest of them are still not deactivated, but hampering Kaon while a few are not.
But Kaon shook his head.
No, not at all. I am actually wary of the opposite. When I push against the anti-psyker veil, it puts a lot of strain on me. Normally, I could bear it easily and heal later. But I am in a less than pristine state.
Yeah, they disarmed him. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I literally thought about it. It's like, you know what? It's not worth fighting it. I had to say it. I had to say it.
I am not sure how long my body can withstand these forces,
said the Chaos Space Marine.
Oh, that is hard to look at.
So, in other words, Anakin began to say, you're not afraid that they will shut you down. You are afraid that they will burn you up, said Anakin.
Too much power?
Kaon chafed at the wording, but nodded.
Which also does imply he hasn't figured out the entire differences in the warp yet, because he's worried about burnout as opposed to being eaten. Granted, as a psyker of his power and a chaos sorcerer, maybe that isn't really a concern for him in general. He might actually find it more disturbing if he can draw without... He's a chaos psyker. He's a chaos sorcerer. A lot of puns... Wow, I'm not sure why I'm going puns on that one. A lot of his power is probably tied up in deals he made and barters made. He might actually be weakened on that case. On the other hand, he can now just draw fully of the warp without any impediments at all, so... Could go either way. Definitely going to be interesting to see what he does when he fully realizes that, oh shit, I can do all that I want now without anyone saying otherwise.
I fear nothing. But yes, that is more or less the gist of my concern. I will need to create a space again when we find my weapons. And it is for that task that I must conserve my strength. The longer I am strained here,
he led, the less chance we will be successful where it counts. Anakin concluded.
Precisely,
said Kaon. All right, then I'll do it, said Anakin.
What?
Asked Kaon. I'll lift it myself, Anakin asserted.
How?
Kaon asked, already
Reach out,
knowing
touch a
the
guy.
answer. In response, Anakin reached up and took hold of one of Kaon's shoulder-mounted black stone rods. Like this. If these rods can amplify your power, they should be able to amplify mine.
What's that going to do
I'll
with
lift
Kaon I already
it
have? Yeah?
and hold the veil up.
That sounds, one, really cool, but two, that would also imply that if he's reaching out and using them, I'm trying to put my thoughts in order here, because this seems really like a bad idea. Anakin drawing on the rod to amplify himself, and wow, that is really not a sentence I thought I would say. I got the last video demonetized pretty fast for all the jokes a fan definitely intentionally put in there. But joking aside, those are still literally embedded in Kaon. You think that's going to have some kind of effect to have someone else drawing the juice through the stick inside of his ass? I mean, for all I know, there might actually be one going through there, so it might not even be inaccurate.
If I can do that, do you think you can incapacitate those defenses? Anakin asked. Kaon smiled inwardly.
I know I can. But you will only be using one rod. I have all 12. Whatever the strain to me might be, you will be dealing with worse.
The sorcerer cautioned. Anakin's face tightened, but just as the Chaos Space Marine had predicted, he did not shrink away from the task. I'm less roughed up than you are. I can take it.
I'm good. I'm good. Just drink to forget. Drink to forget. Oh, okay. Okay, we're good. I'm sorry. It's just... Oh, wow. Yeah, I know. I have a 5-year-old sense of humor. And just talking about how they're having the games with the rods. It's just... Oh, I'm glad my wife can't hear this. Love you, dear. Oh, I'm in so much trouble.
Said the Jedi General. Kaon nodded, feigning reluctance. The Jedi had no idea what he was about to attempt, and soon he would expend all of his strength and force the sorcerer to take over him. Once that was done, they would be connected through the black stone rod, and Kaon would do what he needed to do. He would depart his ruined flesh and begin anew within the stolen body of this good-natured fool.
Oh, he's looking to possess himself, or to possess Anakin.
And Kaon would do what he needed to do. He would depart his ruined flesh and begin anew within the stolen body of this good-natured fool.
I can see this not going as Kaon wants. But also, if it succeeded, I would laugh my ass off.
It was a sour thing for Kaon to reward trust and alliance with treachery. But
really? No, seriously. The fact that he would consider it sour, not that he would do it, that doesn't surprise me. Chaos Sorcerer. But that it would be sour to him, that is actually surprising to me. I mean, even if he's lying to himself, the fact that he would take the time to lie to himself about this, I mean, the only person that deluded is Lorgar. And I would not put Kaon on Lorgar's level, because that is a level that very few people manage to pass in terms of douchebaggery, one of them being Erebus. Fuck that guy.
But it was a far more sour thing to remain within the husk he had been reduced to, while under the tender care of his Imperial hosts. Ever since the moment he had felt Anakin manipulate the Blackstone, he'd known there could be no other way. Already the Jedi was flagging in his strength, and Kaon had no doubt that the man would feel pain once the moment was upon them.
I will honor his struggle. I will do what I can to forewarn his doomed republic.
He decided he would do that much, at least.
I'm almost hoping this succeeds and Anakin just takes over Kaon's body. Because, I mean, robot prosthetics, sure, why not? One, it would be funny to me. Two, Palpatine having a deal with a Chaos Sorcerer at Anakin's body who he just gave ultimate power to. Oh, I don't want Anakin to get fucked over this way, but at the same time, I kind of want Palpatine to get fucked over this way. Oh, wow.
Are you ready?
No.
Kaon asked. Anakin nodded. Should I try to build up to it, or give it all I have all at once? He asked. Kaon thought for a moment.
Give it everything you have. You will need at least that much to lift the veil. Sustain that effort for as long as you can. It shall not take long for me to finish the work.
Fan, I know it's not intentional, but dear God, you have the innuendo down so bad on this one. Wow.
Said the sorcerer.
Mace, who's Jaro and Saffron? The Saffron, who's Jaro? It's probably one of the Jedi, I just don't know.
Jedi Masters Mace Windu and Jaro Tapal braced as
Tapal.
the now desperate Imperial charged in towards them like a speeder truck. Armor sparking around his disabled arm as the Marine whipped his empowered stave around his body, timing its rotation to the strike he would no doubt seek to deliver. The two masters extended their hands to seize him again, but this time with the librarian being aware of the two, the tactic did not work so well. Instead, their minds and wills met his own, cast out into the void between them in anticipation of this tactic. A brief mind war followed, Jaro and Mace's faces constricting in sudden, intense effort, time slowing and nearly stopping as the speed of bodies was replaced by the speed of thought. Their wills collided, and right away the Jedi moved to subdue the Imperial together. But the effort was for naught, for while two minds were ostensibly better than one, the brain they were attempting to grasp was lined with razors. Mace reached in for the thoughts of the attacking Marine and found himself in sudden quiet.
Sorry, this is something I have a complete geek out moment for, just because in the same way I love thoughts or just anything depicting spaceships and just giant amounts of them, I like having different people describe what mental combat looks like, because it's always unique. And some people default to the very shape-based ways to describe things. And honestly, I kind of understand that because that's how you conceptualize things. Giving form to a thought process is literally what's going on here. But it's just really cool to see, like, they're reaching in and grabbing his Ghibli bits, but then they're all razor sharp because of how his mind is centered like that. And it's such a cool way to just hear someone describe a process that is completely wrong and nothing like that at all, but it's the best way to do it and also completely like that. And just, I'm geeking out, but I like how this is done.
3 suns burning in an orange sky above him. All around him rose pillars of stone, reaching like buried fingers out from the sand around him. He was within an ancient half-buried arena, and he was bleeding. All the children corralled here were bleeding.
Children?
They looked up at him, hollow eyes, hatred in every one.
Oh,
his
before
hands
he was chosen,
hurt.
or when he was chosen.
They hurt horribly, a feeling echoed in many parts of his body. But he was hurting everywhere else because he had been struck everywhere else. His hands, however, did not hurt from being struck. They hurt from doing the striking. And the victims of it lay, breathless, strengthless, hateful, and afraid, all around him.
Well done, boy,
said a voice that was like thunder.
This is when he got chosen.
A shadow stood over him, tall as a mountain, with glowing red eyes. An angel. of death. It reached down, this thing of impossible size, shrinking itself, so that it could place something hard and warm in his blood, dirt-caked hands.
Oh?
A sun-baked blade, a bloody razor.
Now,
Crimson
finish
razors.
it and be chosen.
They kill kids to get in. Of course they do.
Earthly bonds and ascend in the Emperor's name.
Unless they meant to cut the
The
hand.
mountainous angel commanded. The boy's hands were trembling, shaking, but then there was a sting on his neck, the bite of a needle from behind, and his sore muscles stilled. His pain receded somewhat, and his strength returned.
Oh, is that an apothecary? Huh. Sorry, I guess it could just be a regular Space Marine with the stimulant too.
He turned his eyes down, looking away from the angel and instead casting his sight upon the pathetic, dirty children all around him.
So we're literally seeing how he was chosen, how Saffron became a novice. Novitiate? What's the phrase anyways? One sec. Sorry, allergies. They're a bitch. It's like I'm allergic to cats and I have 2 of them that sleep on my pillow all the time. Weird. But more importantly, is this going to be one of those horrible ones where it's like, yeah, go full on Anakin to be blooded into the Crimson Razors? Neophyte ripoff? Okay, that's the word. Neophyte. All right. That makes sense. Still, though, man, just looking at this but it's also Windu singing as well. It's probably going to surprise him.
In the past few months of training, they had become everything to him, and he had become one of them.
And now they have to kill each
An
other.
aspirant, a challenger, a destined child. They had struggled, starved, and worked together, completing challenges, overcoming other groups, and finally arriving here at this place. Here, he and his family of a dozen had been forced to fight, bare-handed, until only one could stand. And that one, the anointed one, was he.
A warrior of the Emperor has no family but our Heavenly Father and others who are chosen. They are not chosen.
The Titanic Marine told the boy.
You cannot ascend as long as they chain you here.
I mean, on the one hand, Fan is doing a lot of the work right now to show us that this is a brutal and monstrous way that isn't about being stronger. It's about being willing to kill people you love because we are the Crimson Razors. And it's brutal, but it's also a level of brutality that is pretty common to Space Marines. Not all of them do it this way. Some are way more polite about only killing you after you've been accepted, and then if you die, you die. We don't care. And then most of them do die. I'm actually thinking more about the Grey Knights, so they're not really Space Marines about that. But as much as this is brutal, the only thing really separating this from the normal is it doesn't need to be done to kill everyone. It's literally the act of breaking your own bonds and killing people you love as a sign of devotion. It's also really good brainwashing 101, which is going to actually happen to them as part of becoming a Space Marine, to brainwash them. And if they actually cared about people, it would be an easy link, and it's not a bad idea. It's just the way to go about it is intentionally cruel. So, standard 40K showing the lack of humanity. So Fan really did encompass that in what is, at least I'm assuming, a custom-created chapter on his end.
The boy who would be Saffron, the boy that was Mace Windu, nodded up at the Angel of Death. He raised the stained blade in both hands, letting it split the sun with its shadow. A shadow blacker than anything he'd ever seen, blacker than any sleep he'd ever had. And without further words, the boy began to cut.
We literally... Shadrick? Oh, Lazarus and Shadrick. Okay. So we're actually getting to the St. Lazarus portion. Kind of surprising that we only had that tiny little example from Saffron's point of view. Usually Fan goes into a lot or much longer sections, so it's kind of cool just to get that little bit here. But also, and this is just my speculation, things are very much coming to a head because in a lot of times when you play multiple perspectives like this, when the perspectives start to shrink, when the viewpoints start to shift faster and things start swirling around, having a shorter viewpoint does actually add a sense of speed to the overall aesthetic of the narrative. It gives more time, or the impression that there's actually less time. So you're pulled in and it's like, here's a quick viewpoint. Here's a quick viewpoint. It's the literary equivalent of a jump cut. And it works as long as the next section doesn't then drag on a lot and break that pacing and slow it down. But if there's ever increasing shorter segments, pulling people together to a confrontation point, speeding things up and how they turn around, like this one section did, is a really good way to build a narrative sense of urgency on top of actually writing urgency into the story itself. It's a way to use construction of setting and the construction of the narrative format on top of the actual narrative used itself. It's just something I've seen used pretty often, and it does work here. Unless that was just something Fan kind of funked, or not fucked around with. Was fucking around with just having shorter sections and then just threw it in there because he could. Entirely possible. It's kind of weird if that was the case.
Major Lazarus squinted his good eye as the hatch opened
In fact, he's alive.
and took in the moist air. He felt like death itself, and not in a good way. Every single cell in
How's
his
there a
body
good way?
was sick, adjusting less than well to the plethora of hastily applied cybernetics, drugs, and stimulants which had been used to keep him going. He'd been grateful for the time he'd been given to rest while with the Calambian Eagles, but his time with the Scions had ended abruptly, and before he'd even been able to properly thank them, they were gone, off to another objective. The rain he stepped into was starting to abate, but that still left his troops dripping and soaked to the bone. They stood before him, assembled in ranks, or as close to ranks as they could manage. Decimated, but victorious and alive, though only barely. Cadians, Calambians, Kriegers, Vestellans, Tech Priests, Abhumans, and the shards of what remained from those regiments that had been sent to aid Lazarus stood intermingled, groups where they could do so easily, but otherwise unable to find the energy for the effort. He saw a one-armed Calambian sniper slumping under the weight of his tall, pristine sniper rifle. He saw a young, unmasked Krieger leaning against a Cadian woman, her worn, dirty face streaked by bloody black
1313
hair.
made it.
He saw a trio of enormous Bulgrins, all bleeding from wounds of various sizes, yet concerned only for the figure the three held between them. The massive men were all weeping silently, trying to stifle their sorrows as they cradled the mangled body of their commissar.
Oh, and that's from when Gax went all ghosty. That was early on. Oh, this is literally Fan taking a moment to use Lazarus as a viewpoint character to then take a step back and look at all of the various characters he's been writing from viewpoints of from Lazarus's perspective. This is literally a self-indulgent moment of, see, here's all the people I've made and created. Here's my boys. Sorry, it's silly, but I love moments like this because it does kind of start to pull the narrative together. And literally here, it's interweaving every single piece we've been seeing from, multiple different viewpoints into one specific moment where we know they are at, but not naming them by name because one, Lazarus wouldn't know that. And also, so that if Fan ever changes his mind, it wasn't them, it's just other people. Oh, not Galaxies of Bulgrins from the bridge? Ah, rip off. That's my mistake then. Still, it's really cool to see that.
The dead man seeming childlike in their massive hands. The sight of them, all of them, straightened Lazarus' spine and hardened what failing metal the man had left. He had no right to stand before them with a slouch. No right at all. At his side was the Sister of Battle who had accompanied the penitent engine, the least scathed of them all, yet bearing her own notable damage, most of which she had sustained during the descent from the park. He knew not if she felt the same way he did, or simply had enough faith and vitality contained in her armor to hold her up even now. But she strode with a surety and purpose which made it seem as though, to her, nothing was amiss. He wished he could have that faith, as he stood before his soldiers and snapped around to face their same direction, waiting. They stood inside the smoking walls of the basilica, at last returned from whence their mission began. In spite of this, Lazarus had the creeping suspicion that their work was far from done. Still, he closed his eyes as much as he could and listened. While the sound of distant battle marred the air from afar, there were noises which were blessedly absent from the cacophony.
Like what?
No more artillery fire fell on the base, and that, he knew, was because of them. His eyes snapped open as the large gates before them creaked and swung wide, watching as the Commissar Captain stepped through, surrounded by a large cadre of guards and the buzzing crowd of his war staff. The unofficial major swallowed hard as he watched the red and black-garbed man approach, an air of authority whirling about him, akin to a tyrannical storm which he wore like a vestment of his office. If Lazarus...
Now I'm just wondering, is this the Commissar we saw at the end who was being painted as a villain on the Imperial side? Or... I don't know. Because the thing is, I don't remember Shadrick. I think I remember who he is, but my memory is shit. That means nothing.
Could have stood any straighter, he would have.
He sounds like a prick.
Sergeant Lazarus.
Yep, no, never mind, it is.
Commissar Shadrick said as he approached. Lazarus snapped a proper salute, nearly averting his eyes as they met the hard spheres of his superior. Already the man had made a point of re-establishing Lazarus' standard rank, something which both terrified and relieved the man. "Yes, sir," he said. "I've received a briefing on what happened. You will be debriefed at a later date and receive your punitive hearing afterward," the Commissar said. "Yes, sir."
Punitive hearing, my ass. Like, they're going to survive long enough for that. Well, I mean, Lazarus, I have a feeling, will survive long enough for that. Shadrick, probably not.
Lazarus
I fully expect him to die.
There was no other answer to give. "Punitive hearing?" asked the sister standing beside Lazarus. "Why would he be subject to such a thing? We accomplished our objective, as you can see."
Because this is the Imperium, and Shadrick was the example fan created it exactly like I thought he was. He's the one who hated Sister Rejulia, who had the moment of "I reject you," when she actually just denied the witch. Still think that might come up to something later. Not so much her, but something else happening, just because it seems like it was such a one-off. And also because if you don't find a body, I never expect someone's dead. Also, one sec. Sorry, legs were getting stiff for saying so long. But yeah, so I do remember exactly who he is. Honestly, I thought I was wrong for a second there. Shadrick is a good example of the bad things in the Imperium. Corrupt assholes who are more concerned with their own power and beating down anyone who they think is lesser, which is literally anyone who's not them, who doesn't have power over them they need to suck up to. So, standard toady, over-promoted asshole who's literally the joke about every horrible, incompetent boss you've ever met, who you just want to punch in the face. It's Shadrick. Again, fan had someone, because if he didn't have characters like this, the Imperium would be the good guys. Like the flat-out good guys. Not the good guys because everyone else is worse. The good guys because they're actually really good. And that should never be the case, according to Fan in his aftertalk. Shadrick is a good example of that. That said, there is a sister here, and she knows Major was given a battlefield promotion by someone without the chain of command to do so. Better question, there's enough people here who are probably absolutely dedicated to Lazarus. Will they accept that? And does the Commissar randomly get a bolt in the back of the head? From enemy action, of course. It's those damn sniper orcs again.
We can stand here and converse in the open only because of his efforts," she added.
And he is not okay with that.
The Commissar glared down his nose at the woman, but did not respond to her, instead continuing. "Captain Velix will take command from here. For the time being, you are to return to your squad and resume your sanctioned duties." The Commissar looked to his left and waved forward a prim female officer from his cadre, who saluted and then took her place beside Lazarus, effectively replacing him as she saluted.
Yeah, she is so dead. Like, the death flags aren't even small here. It's literally like, hey guys, I'm here to be just in the way of the main character. And I guess Lazarus would count as the main character in this situation. Don't mind me. I'm only here temporarily. Death comes quick. Again, orc snipers, man. Although in this case, it might actually just be enemy fire.
A plethora of bizarre emotions wormed through the Calambian man in those moments, and he faltered, remaining stiff in response.
Okay, goddamn. I wasn't sure the scale of this building. It looks huge. But then you actually see the scale. Those little dots down there are people. I love the art fan shows for this because that looks so freaking cool. And does show the brutal mass style of the Imperium for just one of their basilicas to look like this on an otherwise tech-low world. I mean, yes, it's all industry all over the place. But, I mean, this is, normal Earth-level industrial setting, and they put the basilica in it. But then it's just so huge by comparison that buildings are actually building up around it. It's just, sorry, I'm geeking out over the art he chose. It does look so cool.
"Is that clear, Sergeant?" Shadrick asked a moment later. "Sir, yes, sir!" Lazarus snapped off, though before he could turn to do as ordered, the sister beside him interjected again. "Are you hard of hearing, Commissar? I am certainly hard on those who make me repeat myself," she said. At this, the Commissar did turn to regard the woman, eyes narrowing in his thin, sharp skull.
Oh, so we have this setup. We have a fanatic sister of battle, because you cannot be one without being a fanatic. And we have a absolute corrupt, power-tripping Commissar who doesn't want to give in. And they're literally two forces. Technically, Shadrick is right. It was an out-of-chain-of-command promotion that he had no right to take, but did because, fuck it, no one else is doing it. And then the command, when we saw them, 1, head command was dead. 2, everyone else was like, fuck it, give him the rope to hang himself, he'll probably die, sort itself out, but then he didn't. And Shadrick's just going like, I hate the person who did this, so I'm going to do it. I just... Oh, the clash of personalities that will never actually agree on this. Oh. And people are teasing Fan in the chat about how she's very hard on some people. Fan, I'm going to give you a break on this one. You didn't go nearly as unintentional innuendo on this as you did previously. But damn, previously, man, you very much earned that.
"And you are?" he asked. "Sister Superior and Legatine Novitiate, Lorraine Zara Syed," she said. Lazarus felt his eye bulge in his skull. A Legatine Novitiate! He had snapped orders at a Legatine Novitiate?
What?
His subtle desire to step...
Okay, this might just be me not being aware of it, but what does a Legatine Novitiate mean then? I thought a Novitiate was basically just a trainee. And a Sister Superior is the rank equivalent of a sergeant within the Sister of Battle. Although Legatine is the equivalent of probably legate, just with the fake Latin on top of it. And why is everyone in the chat going, the waifu is here? The waifu don't help you. Because Fan has a lot of characters who would very much count for waifu factor, one of which I will include is Lazarus.
Back into his old rank and vanish into the guard tripled in that moment. And he felt a cold...
And Fan just clarified a legatine is the highest rank of frontline commander within their orders. Oh, okay. That would do it. Huh. See, I'm used to the tabletop where Sister Superior is ranked specifically for the sergeant equivalent, but I guess Legatine is on top of that. Makes more sense.
Corpse sweat start to stain his skin,
Different
Looking
orders,
between the fanatic and the commissar, and wondering which...
And it just occurred to me, because even though he's not in her chain of command, he is very much a political creature who's doing it for his own power. So not being in the chain of command actually makes sense, because she has power, so she could fuck him over in the ways he actually cares about. But if he was actually non-corrupt and actually competent, he'd be like, yeah, but you're not in my chain of command. I'm doing this because it's right. And technically, his orders would still be right. But he's doing it because he's a corrupt asshole and it's a power trip, so he's actually more receptive to this. The irony being, he's going right for the wrong reasons to wrong for the right reasons.
One of them would kill him first if he could not make good his getaway. Shadrick raised an eyebrow, affecting a mildly impressed expression at the discovery, while the sister continued to glare through the lenses of her power armor. He acted in a capacity far outside of his rank. It's as simple as that.
And it looks like my internet connection is going weird right now. Just going to pause for a second and put an ad in. Just going to make a point in chat. Yeah, sorry about this. Just issues right now with YouTube being less than connected. It should be fine. I don't know why it fucked up, so hopefully it won't be an issue for long. Maybe that would do it, maybe not. Otherwise, I blame Fan for making all the waifus very adorable. Yep, don't mind me, just throw it in there. Also, I just want to throw out, holy shit, Hobbit, thank you so much earlier for the 20 new gifted members. That is literally doubling the amount of members on this channel right now, and it actually is a huge amount. Thank you. Oh God, Fan said, no one is safe. None of your waifus. And he also corrected me, Lazarus is a husbando, not a waifu. I reject your reality, sir. Also, if there's an ad, he can't hear me say that, so I can get away with it. Moving on.
That, he said. He acted in accordance with the will of Sister Julia, the Sister Superior said.
Oh,
the Sister Palpatine does not have the power to enforce her will on the Astra Militarum. The Commissar retorted smoothly. And all of these soldiers are aware of that. There may be unusual clemency granted in light of these equally unusual circumstances.
Yeah, dude, you're arguing with a fanatical religious zealot who is now, probably accurately, weighing the idea of, I can shoot you and get away with it. Do I shoot the Commissar and get away with it? And the answer is, yeah, she very well might.
But that will be decided by myself and other officers involved at the hearing, which will take place in the future. Not here, not now. Here and now, I need these soldiers ready to go to the front. Lazarus felt a pit open in his stomach. To the front, as in the front line. He looked back at the soldiers behind him, half already beginning to look horrified as the overheard conversation sank in. That is absurd,
it's a death sentence,
said the sister, voicing the dissent within his own thoughts. Major Lazarus and his men have just returned from a taxing mission in which all of their cunning and force was required to attain victory.
And the only way Lazarus gets out of this without suffering worse is if he volunteers for the suicide mission. Because right now, saying no to a commissar is good ways to not be alive. And that is fully within their right.
You cannot reward that by throwing their lives back into the furnace so quickly. These soldiers need food. They need rest. Sister Lorraine shifted her grip
that would only be
the
sensible.
Enormous
We do not have a
bolster
sensible
she still
person
held,
talking.
voicing several curses worth of agitation by the gesture alone. The Commissar seemed unimpressed. Sergeant Lazarus and these soldiers need to get back in line and prepare to do their duty. And you, sister, need to get back in your chapel and cease this interference. I don't care if you're the Emperor-blessed Canoness herself.
Okay, one, I think we saw her earlier. Two, Wow, fan, you chose some really rough art to look at. Like his face, yeah, sure. The barbed wire, sure. The teeth, man. A certain inquisitor looks at this guy and goes, "Can I get the name of your dentist?" Oh, dear God. That is actually rough.
This is
Where did you
my
find
command.
this?
These are my soldiers.
No, they're not.
And my decisions are not up for discussion.
Friendly fire?
Begone from here. We've no more business. Lazarus, what are you still doing here?
Oh, this guy's an idiot. I thought he was savvy enough to realize pissing off someone who's a fanatical religious zealot is bad. But also that is pretty much in line with the more corrupt people inside of the Imperium at the upper levels who are just in it for themselves, because they are the kind of idiots who would look down on a Primarch and try and outsmart them. And yes, I'm referencing the fact that that actually happened with the previous High Lords and the people under them who thought that would be the smart move. And may or may not have concluded that book with a realization that the Gene Stealer cults were actually within Terra already. Yeah.
Back in line. Shadrick snapped, his voice never rising past a certain octave. I will not! Major Lazarus, remain where you are! The Sister Superior spat. Lazarus felt his legs jerk, but he remained rooted to the spot, unsure of whom he'd be more terrified to disobey. That, more than anything else, shook the Commissar, whose calm face broke into a scowl.
Yeah, no, my money's actually on the sister. The Commissar is an idiot and fully battlefield attritionable. The sister probably would not be ignored if she dies, where this guy, if he dies, like, oh no, how horrible. Next.
His arm hitched up, his hand landing unsubtly on the grip of his own bolt pistol. And the sister audibly scoffed through her helmet.
If he pulls the gun, yeah, he's dead. And I'm pretty sure it wouldn't just be her shooting him. It would be a lot of the people behind Lazarus who would make a value decision very fast. And sure, this guy's troops might also have some issues with it, but yeah, I don't think they're going to, because they've had to deal with him.
Draw that at your own peril. I am not one of your guardsmen, to be discarded at your leisure. Fire upon me, and it will be the very last thing that you do.
Also, considering she's in power armor right now, she's probably going to survive that shot too.
Commissar Captain, she warned, not even bothering to lift her own weapon. If I choose to open fire on you, I will not do so alone.
Wait, and in the chat, ooh, we have a new revelation from Fan. He has a favorite waifu. It is Ishtara, hands down. And we have no class. I don't know who Ishtara is, so I cannot say anything about that. That said, if anyone has fan art of her, let me know, so we can definitely tease Fan when I use it as part of the thumbnail for the next episode. I mean, come up with an innuendo-based pun for the title. I mean, give a very accurate representation of how she should be displayed per the next episode. Yeah, that's the one, yeah. All according to Cake.
The Commissar shot back, giving a short nod. In response, the cadre of guardsmen around him drew their weapons and sighted the sister down on their scopes. This time, a grin cracked across Shadrick's face, though only a subtle one, and the sister did not scoff again, knees bending slightly as she took a half-step back, weapons still aimed down. Then, a distant bell high atop the tower began to toll, and the Commissar's face wrinkled into a hideous scowl. Stand down. These men will submit to my will. As I said, I do not care if the Canoness herself attempts to intervene. This is your final warning.
Please tell me the bell actually heralds the Canoness walking in. And also at this point, I'm fully expecting Ishtara to be the Canoness and to be very old. Because at this point, that would be funny as hell.
Sister Superior, there will not be another, he said.
Oh.
I will not stand down. These men deserve better, all of them. And I am going to make sure they get better.
I mean, on the one hand, She's not wrong. On the other hand, this is 40K, at least in this aspect. They're Imperial Guard. Better is a painless death, normally. So this is a very weird conversation. A Commissar not immediately shooting someone as the first response, and a guard not dying right away. I mean, sure, he was a sergeant, but he's getting better.
Better, she growled. Lazarus became aware of another large force entering through the front gates of the basilica not far away, but refocused his attention on the deteriorating situation before him, nerves fraying, standing rigid as a gravestone. The sister's feet groaned softly against the rockcrete floor, and the Commissar's hand tightened fully around his weapon, his thumb unclipping it. Then you have chosen to... Commissar Shadrick began to say, the grip tightening on his gun. Is he just going to get shot now? Commissar, wait! Please! This has risen far out of hand. Lazarus began to interject, but when he was interrupted, it was not with a vocal retort.
Gun?
Faster than even the sister could catch with her auto-sense-assisted helmet, Commissar Captain Shadrick smoothly drew his bolt gun and fired it into Sergeant Lazarus's gut. The bolt struck his carapace armor and was halted, knocking all of the breath out of the man before detonating and shattering the struck plate utterly.
Wait, did guard armor actually work? Huh. I mean, it's shattering, but it means it did its job perfectly. Wasn't what I was expecting. Usually a Commissar also shoots in the head. And considering how much of... Actually, maybe that's the case. Maybe he wanted to go for a gut shot because it's easier to hit. But I thought they usually just put it straight into the head. Whatever.
Gore and shrapnel sprayed as Lazarus was thrown off his feet
it's a gut
and onto
wound.
His back. Eyes blank, staring up without blinking. More
Oh, never mind. It didn't work. It didn't stop the shot. And if he's not blinking, it means he's dead. Oh, yeah, he is so dead.
Weapons were raised, though, to Shadrick's shock and subsequent dismay, it was not the sister's gun which rose first, though it did raise quickly. Nearly as one,
Fire.
The assorted, haggard soldiers raised their weapons, from the one-armed sniper to the two wounded guardsmen,
they should just fire at this
leaning
point.
on the other, and even the three Bulgrins, who understood aimed guns well enough to follow who the enemy was, raised their gigantic shotguns.
Oh, he's so dead. I hope. I mean, on the one hand, you know, actually, I was going to make a joke about this, but I'm going to make this a serious point now. They could get away with killing a Commissar right now with almost no downside because they're in a charnel house where they're probably going to eventually go out there and fight to their deaths. And once they're dead, nothing can be done to them because their bodies will probably be absolutely annihilated because burning shit up. And they don't care at that point. So... fuck this guy. There's almost no downside to this because they're not going to survive long enough to face any repercussions.
Flat-barreled Ripper guns, slick las guns, and countless ballistic weapons yawned before the Commissar and his cadre. Their 30-plus guns suddenly dwarfed by thousands of firearms.
1,000? Oh, that big a force.
A single-armed Cadian medic scrambled forward, working with the aid of another soldier to staunch the bleeding in the former major's chest as the Commissar, Sister Superior, and surrounding warriors were drawn into a brittle standoff. This is... Shadrick began to hiss,
is this where you just
only to be
off?
cut off by the Sister Superior. Measure your next words very carefully, Commissar, she warned, a divine ceramite statue, the maw of her bolt gun aimed directly at his chest. Accuse a daughter of the Emperor at your own peril.
He's dumb enough.
He grit his teeth, veins pulsing in his...
Hell, he probably actively wants to because of his own little bullshit rivalry with a dead woman.
His head under his tall cap. You cannot win this.
Oh, no, I think she very much can. You, on the other hand, have easy lose conditions.
Hissed. Neither can you, she
but
shot
you care
back.
A lot more.
And soon they were not alone. In only a short time, both forces found themselves surrounded by a third player.
What?
New, more numerous weapons raised inwards towards the Commissar, his men, and those opposing them.
Yep.
The Sister Superior was the first to drop her aim back down to the ground.
No.
Lower your weapons, she called.
And she's doing the stupid thing. This guy's already proven he doesn't give a damn. Really hoping Lazarus pulls this one, but the not blinking thing is a usual good sign of someone not aliving.
To the army at her back, and, hesitantly, they did. The Commissar's soldiers looked around nervously, but held still as statues, keeping their aim trained on the initial rebels.
Yeah, they are not bright. This is really not bright. I mean, oh dear God. Literally, just off this guy. It would be so much easier for everyone and probably safer.
Fearful of what would happen if they swung to aim their guns at the encircling force. An ocean of steel masks surrounded them, all cast in the face of the Lady Dominica. Metal teeth clenched in perpetual expressions of divine hatred. The women wearing them bore lasguns, autoguns, and many, many hefted lit flamers.
Oh.
Over them, standing taller than their sisters, were the true members of the Adeptus Sororitas. Clad in their power armor and shouldering monstrous bolter weapons, and even larger implements of flame and death.
Yeah.
Though the hordes of novitiates wore little more than flak armor over sackcloth garments, even they had masks lined in silver and gold. The true sisters bore the colors too, though with the addition of red as well. Blood red, divine gold, and metallic silver, the colors of the divine cohort. The colors of the Canoness Superior of the Order of the Emperor's Bride. Shadrick scowled and lowered his weapon, his men following suit.
Wait, Order of the Emperor's Bride. This might be me being completely off base, but isn't that similar to the actual name of the cult that spawned the sisters in general? Like, it's probably just similar. It's probably just similar. There's nothing else to it. Yeah, it would be weird if fans specifically brought up the historical name for the actual cult prior to becoming the Sister of the Battle that Van Dyer pulled up from obscurity. Not impossible, though, but I'd be very surprised if they even exist.
If Sister Palpatine Rejulia had been a thorn in his side, then the Canoness was a sword poised over his head.
Yep.
She revealed herself soon enough, the crowd splitting to show her enthroned form. Flanked by her advisors and guarded by her two daughters, both legatine legends of their order. They wore their full panoply of war, but not the Canoness herself. Nearly 400 years old,
Damn.
She was a withered figure, wrapped in white robes with gold.
Oh, it's definitely going to be Ashtar as the withered 400-year-old person. Or, to a Space Marine, a child.
Gold trim and wearing a serene mask bearing the Emperor's own face, eyes closed, as if asleep, but only barely. The Elder was seated on an enormous pyramidal palanquin, her body cradled in an audacious throne of solid platinum. Inscribed upon the throne were many words, each...
Oh my God, she has a tactical chair. There's the 40K model that's a tactical pulpit. Now we have the good old-fashioned version of the baby carrier walker, but for a chair instead. There's actually a model I'm thinking of. I think it was, what was it? It was one of the Inquisitors. I am blanking on his name, that had the tactical chair he was sitting on, and I'm just imagining a Canoness in that chair right now. It was a major character in the 40K TTS version. Kind of kicking myself for forgetting his name, but it's basically what I'm thinking if you know the model I'm talking about.
Artistically rendered into its grand
Fyodor,
design,
that's it.
Formed mostly
Karamazov.
into the shapes
Fyodor.
of bones, skulls, and swords. Faith, duty, honor, law, victory, and wrath.
All of which the current Commissar is ignoring because power tripping.
These words, among others, were predominantly displayed on the gargantuan seat, and the symbolism was not lost on Shadrick. Beneath the throne labored 22 criminals and heretics, most in various stages of robotization, each struggling with all their might to keep the huge construct aloft over their heads.
Damn.
Above them, the throne itself was so large as to dwarf the women sitting within it.
So if I'm understanding the phrase robotization and it's criminals underneath it, they are literally sentenced to carry it, and as pieces of them fall apart, they get replaced by it. So they're literally in slow-mo conversion into not just cyborgs. I forgot the phrase again. Dear God, why can I not remember that? We even heard it earlier in the episode. Yeah. I don't know why I cannot seem to remember that. But they're basically being replaced slowly by metal as part of their punishment. That is pretty metal and disturbing as all get out. So, fitting for 40K.
The Canoness only able to reach and lean upon
Servitors,
one
that's the word.
handrest at a time. The chair was a symbolic representation of the Emperor's authority, her mask a symbol denoting her as worthy of wielding it. It crushed the heretical and the unworthy beneath it, even as it elevated those who embodied its substance. Before it, the soldiers of Lazarus' legion began to kneel, one by one, and then 10 by 10.
Oh.
And then, even Shadrick's own men began to kneel.
That right there is the moment where he loses, when his own men take the knee.
Bowing their heads. Shadrick was their commander, but the Canoness was, to many present, the heart of their faith in the Imperial Creed. And while the Commissar hated to admit it, her presence was an undeniably staggering one. How could one look so frail, and yet so unbearably powerful? Her advice.
Oh God, she's Femme Palpatine in The Empire Strikes Back. And technically, Return of the Jedi. Frail, but also unbearably powerful. I'm standing by my statement. This is Femme Palpatine. Speaking about the tactical pulpit, here's an image of it.
Advisors fell silent, watching from the sides of the throne as they were brought closer. The twin Legatine sisters walking alongside it, sparking blue power swords drawn, jump packs flaring.
Ooh.
Bright orange eyes.
Fan one, I appreciate you gave them jump packs, but goddamn, I'm just disappointed now because there's no actual sister models with jump packs, and I want that! I'm not disappointed, I'm just regretting reality not matching up to what you just elucidated on.
Peered at him from between the seams of the Emperor's closed eyelids, and soon a voice called out to accompany the hidden stare, carried through the air on subtle but powerful audio howlers. "Commissar Shadrick," she said, her voice frail yet sharp, like a crystalline sword. He expected her to question him, to demand an explanation, to seek an understanding. She did not. "Kneel," she ordered. There was no compromise in her voice, no maneuver, no guile. She had just given him an order.
Also, Fan has corrected me in saying Saffron have jump packs. Yes, but that would involve me acknowledging the flight stands GW uses. Just no.
And slowly, Shadrick realized that he dare not disobey it.
Yep. There's a lot of guns.
Trembling with rage and pacified adrenaline, the man swept his cloak out and kneeled before the palanquin. He expected her next words to come soon after. They did not.
Just leave him there.
Instead, he heard a sound he did not understand at first, and once he did,
Lazarus?
It took all his might not to look up and gawk. The sound was the soft, rhythmic tapping of light, old feet slapping against metal.
Oh, she got up.
He felt a long, thin shadow fall over him. And Commissar Shadrick knew she had descended her throne, and now stood over him. Sweat trickled into his collar, and fear joined the other emotions swimming in his mind. He had been unaware that she could even walk, at least without assistance. Ravaged by age and centuries of battle, he had not heard of her descending her throne in public for decades.
That also means he's going about his own personal... it's not even the personal information. Right now, they're using his knowledge base, which is just rumors, not any specific form of intelligence. And I mean that both in the sense of having people to give him information and being smart enough to think. Because if he doesn't even know she can walk, that means he's just going off public appearances, and she probably sits down as a power play all the time.
The novelty of the act was the truly frightening aspect of it. What did she intend to do? A withered hand came into view, bejeweled in various rings and items that seemed like rings. After a pause, he took the hand gently and kissed it.
She actually has him doing the kiss the ring. Oh my... Because she's equivalent to the Pope in this situation. And the best part is, well, two things. One, the music in the background being very airy and mysterious and mystical to go with the entire holy aspect of the order itself. And also to show exactly who is in charge of the scene, because they're the one getting theme music and not the Commissar. And the best part is, if she wants to really fuck him over, she would just ask him, how is Major Lazarus doing? And just leave it at that. Or address something else about Major Lazarus and just say the phrase Major. Or, to really piss him off, General Lazarus. And then finding out that she just watched the Commissar kill a general. I mean, a Commissar can get away with it, but she could do anything she wants right out to fuck him over. Because the power dynamic is much more in her favor.
Act forcing onto Shadrick
if he's not dead.
The full realization of how little his military command meant here and now.
Yeah.
This was not his castle. It was hers.
Yep.
And she was not queen of this place. She was empress of it. Her hand pulled away.
That is a very dangerous comparison right now. Anyone who claims emperor or empress in the Imperium, that is a good way not to be alive. You can call yourself a lot of things. You can call yourself a king, a leader, a Kaiser, because it's just different enough. Most people probably wouldn't understand the difference in language, but those who do would not be happy. But it's just different enough, especially if you say you don't understand. But calling yourself an empress right here, the fact that he would even conclude that that is accurate, it does show that what we already kind of guess is true. He's in it for himself. He doesn't care about the emperor. Because anyone who does, like the sisters, would probably kill him for saying that out loud.
After a moment, and fell onto his shoulder. A pressure pressing down on him as the Canoness lowered her masked face so she could speak into his ear. Confess, she whispered. Confess, and I will be merciful. Shadrick's blood ran cold.
Mercy is a quick death. He is so fucked. And the best part is, from his position, and by technically the truth, he didn't do anything wrong. But he also realizes that don't matter at all.
What was she speaking of? What did she know? He dragged in a shuddering, tremulous breath, gathering himself. She knew nothing. If she did, she would not be waiting for a confession.
Or she's just being
nice. That fact in mind, he looked up, meeting her hidden orange eyes, and lied.
Orange?
I have nothing to confess, Canoness.
Oh. He lied. What else was he doing that we weren't privy to? Because technically, everything he's doing about Lazarus is kind of legit. And not something he needed to confess over. So it's something else he did that he feels is a lie. And that he does think he needed to confess about. But isn't because bullshit reasons. Huh. What other fish was he playing around with? Probably something to do with an Inquisitor that's an asshole.
Said in a low voice. She stared at him, neither nodding nor looking away, her eyes fixed on his in a way which made the Commissar regret his decision to meet them.
Yeah.
But that contact was broken by the intrusion of a third party. Canoness! The cry came from the ground, from the one-armed Cadian medic who was, even then, attempting to tend to Lazarus. Canoness, I cannot save him! This man saved our lives! He brought the Imperium victory where we could only expect defeat! He deserves to live! She pleaded. The Holy Lady of the Sisters turned her mask to regard Sister Lorraine, and she nodded, speaking a moment after. It is true. Had we air support or artillery, even dedicated reconnaissance, the battle would not have been swayed against us. But when it did, it was Major Lazarus who swayed it back. He acted far above any capacity that could have been expected of him. Rajulia saw the will of the Emperor when she chose him to lead.
Accurate, too.
The elder woman, all wrapped in white, nodded and strode past the Commissar, leaving him forgotten and kneeling in her wake.
And if
She knelt down beside the dying form of the sergeant-major and stroked her hand over his face. No, he was not dying. He was already dead. Can you save him? Asked the medic. His duty is ended. Said.
Why are we calling him Saint Lazarus? Do they canonize him, or does this go full-on saint? Because in 40K, saint is a very specific term. For example, Celestine, who is known to come back from being not alive. Would they do that? He hasn't been using that kind of power so far. And usually that's shown beforehand. I guess it's more just a canonization then.
The Canoness. He has gone to the Emperor's side.
Might actually have to.
However, she added. She drew back her hands and carefully began to remove her jewelry.
What?
Taking off each ring carefully and setting it aside upon the ground. Once her hands, old and thin and withered, were bare, she hiked up her sleeves, revealing the ravages of her age in the pale flesh there.
I don't know why, but I'm getting so much the Emperor's New Groove vibe about Yzma just going, I bet you didn't expect this, when she pulls up her dress, and then they stop freaking out when they see it's just a knife. I'm sorry, that's exactly where my mind went right here, and it's not entirely wrong. It's just the sleeve of her arm rather than the sleeve of her dress. Like, well, that wouldn't be a sleeve, is it? I don't know nearly enough about dresses in general to say anything about what that actually is, but yeah.
Skin once filled with vital muscles was now loose and wrinkled. Calluses hung suspended in her hands, and bones could be seen in the remaining shape that was left to her. Those old hands moved down over the former Major's face and chest, moving without a tremble, and with such grace and precision as to remind the watchful that, old as she was, she had been and remained an instrument of the Emperor's wrath. Her thin fingers reached the gore and pooling blood of his stomach, and sank into it, red grime speckled with shards of ceramite frothing forth from the act.
What's she doing?
And then there was light.
What?
A golden radiance filled the air around the Canoness like a floating mantle of starfire, moving in the space around her like a fiery ribbon suspended within water.
Psychic power?
It wound around her gradually, making its way down into the lifeless man beneath her hands. His body jerked, and Lazarus suddenly found focus in his eyes, gasping and then screaming on the ground, arms and legs twitching wildly.
How?
She did not stop, forcing more of the light into him, slowly removing her red-smeared hands until finally she was clear of his body.
How? I mean, this is full-on warp trickery at this point, but the sisters explicitly don't deal in that, so did she just have literal vials of faith on her? You know, actually, that's probably not even the craziest thing I've heard, but damn, she's actually pulling a... A Lazarus. Yeah, I realize I shouldn't be surprised. His name is literally right there.
And the light ceased to shine. Like a prisoner released from electrocution, Lazarus fell limp, panting raggedly, confused, yet alive.
And Josh, thank you very much. And he wrote, and through the canvas, Big E said, no. There it is. Now he gets it. I mean, I kind of figured Lazarus was the joke because he just won't die from having literal parts of him blown off. I guess it's literally the statement of his name is going to act out on it. Oh my God.
The soldier beneath them reached out blindly, and she took his large, gloved hand in her own bony fingers, squeezing his hard enough to get his attention.
Faith is bullshit.
He gazed up at her masked face in open awe as she began to speak and to stand. Rise again, worthy servant of the Emperor. Our Lord and Master will not have you come before his final war on such disgraceful wings. I give you back not your life, but your death. I hope it will be better spent this time. Now, return to your place, Major. I will have use for you in the defense of my basilica.
I have no idea what she just said. Like, legitimately, I couldn't. Oh, my basilica. Okay. It just got too faint at the end. I know it's intentionally done that way to show the withered age, to draw out the words, and it's quieter because she's old. But at the same time, I just... The volume I wish was turned up just a little bit because I can't hear what she was saying.
For you in the defense of my basilica. And then, as if what they had all seen was not enough, she pulled tight on his arm and helped him rise to his feet.
Lazarus
a sight which beggared reality nearly as much as her denial of Lazarus's death had. She then extended a red hand towards one of her daughters, who came forward quickly, gently taking her mother's arm and supporting the woman. Doing so just in time, the Canoness slumping against her as though she had narrowly avoided a collapse. Cheers and prayers began to fill the air then, each one a call of outright mockery in the mind of the humiliated Commissar.
Yep,
who
and very
still,
intentional.
even then, knelt where he had been placed, his earlier bluff reduced to ashes in his mouth. In spite of the new noise, he could still make out the Canoness's voice, loud and strong just moments before, now sounding haggard and weak.
And we all know the weakness is probably related to using that power then. Is she literally just kept alive through faith in the Emperor? That's actually a really cool way to interpret it. I'm not sure if that's in fact how canon works, but for 40K, as Fan is writing it, it sounds perfectly plausible, and honestly not as big a stretch as what 40K canon is doing with belief in the Emperor. As in, no one really knows, including the people writing it seems. So, neat.
Take me back to my throne. She breathed to her
She's
daughter.
having Lazarus do that, or her sisters?
Yes, mother.
The mother.
Said the
the
towering,
sisters are doing it.
armored Sister Legatine, aiding her Canoness in ascending the steps once more.
Very much enacted
But
that point.
as they
Maybe
passed
actually
Commissar Shadrick's kneeling form, the Holy Elder spoke once more.
Sentence?
Just loud enough for both her and the Commissar to know he had heard. Commissar, Captain, you are dismissed. Make preparations and leave my basilica at once.
Wait, Fan, is that? Oh, I know that song in the background.
You are dismissed. Make preparations.
String Storm, that's the Sister of the Battle theme. Nice.
And leave my basilica at once.
Oh, man. Okay, I'm actually just going to quickly search up that song because that is a banger and I want to hear it right now. 1 second. I cannot spell to save my life. Ah, here we go. Yeah, I'm just going to have that playing in the background because I can. Basically, everyone, as you can probably tell, I'm loving this, man. Oh. So, yeah, if you haven't already, I do have a link in the video below. At least I'm going to double check that I did. Did I forget to add that? No, I got the link to episode 27. They're good. If you haven't, hit up Fan's link. This was freaking amazing. I just wish I knew how. Like, did she get that from the rings that she was taking off? Is that actually her own belief in the Emperor keep her around? I don't know, but the fact that we're seeing actual, physical, tangible evidence that it's being used directly is nice. Mostly because in canon, it's kind of not entirely sure what the fuck is going on. Like, literally, I don't know what the fuck's going on with Faith in 40K. It is weird, because it's supposed to be psychic, but then it's not psychic, and then it is, but it isn't, and it's denied a witch, but that's psychic, but it's actually not, and... Yeah. Oh, I like this one. And this is a really good episode. I can see why people were holding off on this one. I fully expected Lazarus to survive the shot and just get pulled up, or go full, well, saint at that point. But instead, he's getting someone else who very well could make the argument of being a saint themselves, just who has never died, using that power on them, which is something that has happened, I think that. I want to see where this goes. It's just, I find this really funny because in Fan's talks, he mentioned that Lazarus was not the main storyline. He was someone he brought in to show a different side of the battle, and then he's just going to come over here, and I'm just thinking, well, that changed. It's just really funny to compare what he initially thought in those aftertalks to what has come up later, and showing that things do change in how you approach things as he writes. And I'm wondering how much of this was planned in advance, how much did he have to counterpoint to bring into this, how much did he already have as an overarching narrative that he had to completely scrap and rewrite? I don't know, and frankly, that's actually something I really find fascinating. Just seeing how people go through the writing process is always really cool. Some people will sit down, write a story from beginning to end without knowing where it's going to go at every step. Others have an entire layout where they're essentially just writing a slightly more detailed overview the entire time until they just finally get to the end and they just added a few details and a few bits of dialogue, and oh, their script was an outline the entire time, and then it's just more than that as it goes. This is more just me in certain aspects of writing that I find fascinating, and I stand by because it's cool. Oh, the song is too loud? Oh, shit. Yeah, sorry about that. I had it turned down so loud on my end. Sorry, I actually took the headphones off. And I forgot how loud it got. Well, that's on me. Sorry about that. Basically, I was geeking out over writing process. Well, that's on me. And by the time you guys see this, it will actually be like 20 or 30 seconds. Yeah, that's on me. I had it based on the initial sound. That's embarrassing. Well, this is what happens when you do it live. This wouldn't have happened if I had the headphones on. I just like having that song on. Basically what I'm saying is if you haven't already, there's a link below to the original. Hit it up. And it's too bad Fan isn't here because I can give him a horrible time about all the innuendos he put in here about Anakin's rod. Or that Anakin's about to get possessed, and that may or may not have interesting implications due to his status as the Chosen One. What Fan's going to do to interpret that and all the other bullshittery, I don't know. But it's funny. And why is Fan writing It's Always Sunny in Airier, Delphia? Oh yeah, Philadelphia, Airier, Delphia. Okay, I get that. I thought it was Delphi for a second because I apparently can't read. Still, it's not as embarrassing as that one stream I did. Not recently, where I did the entire stream muted without realizing it, or that the camera wasn't working the entire time. I didn't realize it. Or the game wasn't being recorded, so you just saw me freaking out over something you couldn't see or hear. It's a good thing that never happened. Yeah, basically, link below. Hit it up. Normally, I'd say I'd see you guys next week, but next week is Christmas Eve, and I am very much going to be doing Christmassy stuff with family that day. I might even put out a video, but the week after that is New Year's Eve, and there's no way I'm going to have time to do anything then. I did not think this through until literally just now. Either way. Sorry, I'm just reading fans' comments about rolling up a newspaper. I'm just saying, oh my. I'll probably be back eventually in the start of the new year with the next episode because I want to get to it, but there's very little time in the next couple of weeks that I'll have to do anything that's not something along the lines of, well, probably wrangling nieces and nephews so they don't chew on wires as well on top of the cats. Yeah. The cats can be stopped. Children? No. No. So yeah, I'll see you guys when I do eventually get to it. I'll put up a poll for the title, and then I'll put up a various image of whatever the hell's coming up next. I'll try not to spoil myself, but if you have some ideas for what I should call the next episode, let me know whenever I put that poll up so that I have an idea just how many levels of innuendo I can say. I mean, accurate titles to use at the next appropriate time. Yeah. Also, I don't know where the cats are right now, so I don't think I can bring them in. And my wife is not actually within earshot at the moment, so she can't do it either. Yeah. Oh my god, Fan is saying, let them chew wires. It builds character. Yeah, but I did that as a kid. Look at how I turned out. Would you really subject a kid to this? I rest my case. Oh, and Josh Tompkins. I actually missed that. Your foot is about to go so far in your mouth it comes out the other end in coming episodes. I have questions, and I don't think there are appropriate answers that I can comment on. Seriously, though, for everyone who joined in, Scythe, Leanne Robertson, Hobbit, The Real McCoy, Josh Tompkins, thank you all for helping out with this episode. The funding options, the super chats, the memberships, thank you very much. It actually does go a long way on the channel. I do appreciate it. But on that note, I need to cut this one here because I need to go make sure what the kitchens are doing isn't actually chewing on wires downstairs because they're not upstairs making noise, so they have to be downstairs probably doing something dangerous. You know, I was going to say a joke, but no, that's probably exactly what I need to do. Yeah. All the way, I'll see you guys then. Adios. And Fan, thank you again for writing this. This was a blast. Later, everyone.